And we are off. So of course, you know, we're in bed, a little bit of text smashing. It's kind of nice in a way. Gets your head in the game. You have a few seconds here to really, you know, gear down because the speedrun itself is very executionally intensive. And even just kind of these moments here, it's kind of like, okay, deep breath, get ready. Your uncle's gonna have a bad time, but make sure he's okay. It's coming out here, they're lifting up some bushes. You can actually throw a bush with the B button, so if you want, you can plink the input to have 2 presses in order to throw the bush. But either way, you'll see some very strong movement from them here. Very quickly, a technique that you're already seeing is called pumping. Basically, when Link is moving north or west in the cardinal, in those cardinal directions, he moves at 2 pixels a frame. South and east, he moves at 1 pixel a frame. So in terms of the animation, when you're going north or west, your movement is oscillating 2, 1, 2, 1 pixels, repeating a frame. So overall, you're going 1.5 pixels in terms of movement per frame. When you're going south or east, it oscillates, but at 1, 2, 1, 2 pixels a frame. So in certain directions, when Link is facing north or to the west, you'll see them kind of do that little almost stair step kind of motion. It's in order to try and reset Link's movement to get a 2 pixel movement. So instead of a 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, it would be a 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So now that that's out of the way, it actually doesn't save that much time in the speedrun. Because to get the boots, it only saves a handful of seconds throughout the whole run. But it's that kind of little optimization that is, you know, the game's gotten to that point. A big part of this early area and escape is just very clean movement, making sure you're really accurate with your movement, and then dealing with the little bits of RNG that do come along. Yeah, you'll see there, the way they moved was in order to manipulate that soldier RNG so that the soldier will move in a specific manner. Yeah, we can see here already based on like little bits of RNG, and then in terms of movement, runnerwatcher has a very, very slight lead. Oh, well the timer is off too, so maybe they're a little bit closer than that. But it's the idea where little things like that can make the lead shift back and forth between 2 very strong and competent runners. There is sometimes a lot of, you know, room to play, and then sometimes there isn't. But both runners doing very good so far. Yeah, so again, the big thing here is this clean movement. Try not to nudge on anything. The game is built on a grid system, so you want to, for the most part, stay aligned onto that grid. So going upstairs, if you aren't on them cleanly, the game will, by holding the direction, the game will kind of readjust you, but you'll get a small slowdown from it. You'll notice too that when they come out of the stairwells, the automatic ones, especially when entering or one from entering from a new area, they'll be holding left or right. The game has a little bit of a stair lag. I forgot the exact amount of lag. It's like 13 or 17 frames. I'll need to look that up at some point again. But by holding left or right, you actually avoid it. So if you do that and then change your direction right away, you can actually, you know, move a little bit sooner than you would. Yeah, and in terms of time, a good time for escape is about 550 to 6 minutes. You want to get under 6 minutes if you can. Between the RNG and the movement and whatnot, 550 to 6 minutes is a very good time. Yeah, so this room right here is a big source of RNG as well, where the key rat will be. It looks like both of them had some pretty good RNG. The rat unfortunately hitting runnerwatcher there. He did cancel the stair leg, but then that rat can be a little bit trolly. Big thing when you come into this room, right, with the two switches, the runners will hold right coming out of the doorway. When you do that, you actually skip an entire text box. So you only have the one before pulling the switch itself. And now we get a long and weird discussion about how you're the hero to save everyone. You got to go on an adventure. Before you do, you have to go to the grocery store. So make sure you pick up the SIM card, which is synonymous to some pocket change. We are now off to the store. You'll see the direction in which both users come. They are trying to, again, manipulate that green soldier that runnerwatcher just ran past. If you enter the screen transition too low, the soldier's movement pattern will be different. But if you enter in from a little bit higher there and then readjust, the soldier will not be in your way whatsoever. Yeah, examples in terms of pumping. This screen is a very large screen, so this is where a lot of the actual pumping time save will come into effect. Ladders slash stairs are where you really want to make use of the technique. In this screen alone, the time save is approximately 3 seconds. If you don't pump in the air or along a wall, the stairs are a very, vital location to pump. Oftentimes, if your movement is not very clean, then the time save you get from pumping just isn't really beneficial to you. But on stairs, it's always worth going for, even if you tend to not go for it in other places. Yeah, so both runners gain the sync cart. I think that's really smart. Again, in terms of a PB, it's very common to skip it. But the sync cart is a very strong safety. Not only is it very quick to get, but it can set up your hill so that some fights and areas are potentially safer. Fights like Cold Stare that do 4 hearts of damage, if you happen to have a 5th heart, means that you can tank a hit. And subsequently in areas like Thieves' Town with Blind or Mothula, a lot of different bosses, if you have that extra heart, it can really be quite beneficial. Looks like Jet will take the safety arrows. Arrow routing is very strong in this run too, so sometimes you'll see players opt to get certain arrows and, forego others. They're always being conscientious of their arrow count. They are quite strong throughout the entire speedrun. Oftentimes you can compensate or gain little time saves when you have arrows. And of course, when you don't, then you have to change your routing just a tiny little bit. Both on damage boosting to get the big PV chest. It can be a little bit dangerous if you mess that one up, because the bubbles do quite a bit of damage. There are some heart pots there, but still, that's probably one of the hardest parts of Eastern, just making sure you get that clean. And runnerwatcher doing a fun little chest turn. The chest turn may or may not save 1 frame, depending on the source you talk to, but either way, it's a very fun thing to try and go for. And that's the most important thing too. These races are for fun, so do what you find most comfortable. Sometimes there might be a strategy that is technically a little bit better, but you should always do the one you're most comfortable with. Because if you try to do something that is not, homogenous to how you normally operate, then you're going to be in for a bad time. Unfortunate location for that 20 red rupees to be. We're also trying to count our money as well, because we need 110 by the time we get to Palace of Darkness. So the red rupee, while very nice, was at this point not worth going for, and both players actually getting the same red rupee drop, but Jet does opt to do it as he also goes for some extra arrows. And that was a good fight from Runner Watcher. Yeah, and Jet is using the same strategy here. Unfortunately misses an Armos, but that just means he'll be down a few arrows. Both runners now actually have the same arrow count. So now that we have gotten, all our groceries from Eastern Palace, we're at the cash register here. Pretty soon we'll be on our way to the next store. It should be known that inside buildings like this with Sahasrara, you can actually hit the Y button, or not Y, I think it's X, the X button, which would normally bring up the map, but because we are neither in the overworld nor a dungeon, you can use it in order to advance text. And now we can see the boots putting to very good use. Ideally, you try, again, to stay along that grid, that grid pattern in order to make the most of your speed, because the game will try and compensate if you're not aligned to the grid. And checking his spin speed, and, still very close between these two. Yeah, so unfortunately on our adventure we got a little bit lost, but we did stop by at the local library to get directions, and now we're on to the next location. Both runners getting their spin speed here. And of course, like any good road trip, you sometimes need to check your directions a few times. So Runner Watcher playing the sound of our people. For many, the light world can seem kind of boring, but in some ways it is somewhat relaxing with, the long dashing, boot simulator, getting to dash for, a very long amount of time. But there are some parts that are, quite arduous to deal with. Lanmola certainly comes to mind, as well as the Hera area. But Runner Watcher entering desert, or has entered desert rather, and Jet on his way to enter. So the nice thing about desert is that there are a lot of little area locations to collect. It's this dungeon is really good for getting your arrow count up, and they'll be put to good use with the Lanmola fight. Hera gives a couple bombs, but then Palace of Darkness refills your bombs. So it's just a very, kind of convenient, nice route in regard to that. I think part of the magic of the speedrun is how well everything kind of seems to flow together, as well as the different options you have in regard to it. And yeah, it looks like runnerwatcher's stream is having some small issues, but I'm sure he's doing fine. Just means we get to appreciate our other runner all the more, as well as judge him more harshly. Okay, runnerwatcher is back. That's very nice. He is making his way to La Mola. So La Mola can be a bit of a scary fight in terms of this cycle. Not only can you waste a lot of arrows, but you can lose a lot of time in, just within the fight itself. Typically, 3 cycle is about average, or rather average what you're aiming for in terms of proper speed. 2 is exceptional, and 4 is kind of borderline before the fight starts to become quote-unquote bad. You'll also notice that they're making very good use of a technique called key dashing. So Link's average movement moves at about 1.5 pixels a frame, but when you're dashing, you move at 4 pixels a frame. So you try to maximize the distance in which you're dashing. You might be watching the runners and going, why aren't they doing diagonals in some place? Why aren't they using some diagonal movement? The reason why is because they're trying to maximize the 4 frames from their boots. So with the boots moving at 4 pixels a frame, you want to be a multiple of 4 away from a door in order to key dash into it. You'll see the runners use various objects in their environment in order to facilitate that. So if you are a new runner to the game, or you happen to play randomizer and you're wondering why you're not able to consistently dash through doors, it's because everyone, for the most part, is using a type of setup in order to allow that to happen. Yeah, it takes 8 slashes or 4 arrows to take out each La Mola. The big thing here is that you want to spread out the damage you do in order to minimize the amount of cycles you have to do. There's no point in killing one worm very quickly when you miss all the others. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you kill that one worm very quickly, but you're now on a 6th cycle. Yeah, and coming up on runnerwatcher's screen will be our first instance of fake flippers. They do not currently have the flippers, but if you jump off a ledge and transition to another screen within 1 pixel of it, you'll be able to go to the next screen. And the game will kind of read that you're already in the water and let you get away with it. The only caveat to it is that if you take damage, you will softlock the game. But that was a very nice fake flipper from runnerwatcher. We'll see Jet getting to it very shortly. So of course, like any good shopping adventure, we come here to the old man, and we need to help him with his groceries. He's forgotten where his car is. So the gentleman that these 2 runners are will kindly assist him to his vehicle. Ooh, the dead rock almost getting in the way. Oftentimes when you're in a parking lot, there's lots of people going to and fro, but thankfully we have navigated to the gentleman's car. And now runnerwatcher is back on his adventure up the mountain. Yeah, so this is the first instance of going to the Dark World. Based on the camera position, you can get something called a quick warp that is about 30 frames faster. It's based on the X coordinate of the camera, so every time you see the runners go between light and dark world, they're going to try and align themselves on a certain part of the screen in order to try and get that quick warp. So if you see them enter the warp from kind of a funny position, it's more likely than not that they're trying to do that. So, while Eastern can be a little dangerous in the very beginning, Hera is probably the most dangerous in terms of speedrun. It's very easy to lose a lot of time here for, you know, different reasons. So Runner Watcher having some fun and getting a lot of same frame boomerangs. There's a few different things you can do in the room, but the big thing is that if you hit the switch more than once, you're going to be losing time. So regardless of what you see the runners do, that's the big thing. You do not want to be hitting that switch more than necessary. You can see Runner Watcher in the Beetle room. There are a few different strategies you can do in this room. Looks like Runner Watcher does more of a classic strategy. I say classic, but it's the one you'll probably see people do most often. And now, of course, we have Runner Watcher going to the petting zoo. You know, just like, you know, a good a fast food place with a no play park, you know, what good is a store without, you know, petting zoo? But very nice bomb jump for Runner Watcher. In order to bomb jump across the gap, you want to be within 2 pixels of the hole. If you place a bomb and then bonk it against the wall into the explosion, you actually increase the tolerance to 6 pixels. There are multiple different ways to set up a bomb jump, but bonking against the wall is a fairly fast and safe alternative. Unfortunately, there is no alternative for this boss fight. Moldorm, for the most part, while not a big issue, can be, for lack of a better term, trolly. He's got a lot of RNG to his fight, and even dashing through him can be inconsistent. But Runner Watcher gets through without falling, which is the big thing. And of course, Jet shortly to follow. Still not a lot of time between these two runners. Coming out to Aga Tower, the RNG of the blue balls within the fight could be enough to actually sway things much closer together. But so far, Runner Watcher looking very strong with a very slight lead. So now that we have all our items, we're going to our car. It happens that we parked it very far in the woods, so Runner Watcher is going to make a trip to go get it. And here you'll see the first instance of tree pulls. So the different tree pulls have different prize packs associated to them. There is a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3 pull. When you defeat one enemy, you unlock the first tier. When you defeat 4, and take a hit, you are at the tier 2 pull. And when you defeat 4 enemies and take no hits, you get the tier 3. In this case, we're hoping for the tier 3 because it will give 4 red rupees. There are some different rupee routes that you can go for, but this is one of the more standard ones. I believe the progenitor of this strategy was ACMLM. But yeah, just some very different routes that you can take. Sometimes people go to Sahasrara to get the bombs and the rupees there. But again, that's part of the beauty of this run. There are a lot of backup strats and a lot of different strats you can opt for. So again, now that we have everything, we're off to the party at Aga Tower. Runner Watcher choosing to skip the mushroom. The mushroom can be turned in for powder. but Runner Watcher feeling confident and you know, being a long-time runner is not getting the powder nor the mushroom. A more recent popularized glitch, the fake powder glitch, you could use the mushroom in order to mimic powder with the King of Samaria, but he's just not even opting to do that regardless. So we'll see if Jet opts for his mushroom, or if he'll forgo it. No, Jet2 is going to skip it. Picking it up or leaving it, I like both, because you need to have confidence in your run. It's a very chaotic run, but if you have confidence as a player, then you need to display that from the get-go. Both players showing that they are confident. And get your star please out, because we're in Hyrule Castle. If this song did not give you chills as a child, or even an adult, then I'm sorry. It's really hard to go over everything within Aga Tower, but there are some different RNGs and a lot of different strategies you need to encompass. If you have the bow, it opens up different strategies. If you have full health or not, it opens up different strategies. All in all, it's an execution gauntlet, and I think as a runner, you either really enjoy it or you maybe really don't. Runner Watcher taking a little bit of a high risk, high reward strategy there. You can dash across, and I think it is technically quicker, but if a soldier gets in your way, it'll cause for a bad time. Thankfully, he does get a good RNG pattern in terms of the red spears here. And another fortunate RNG pattern right there. Yeah, and we see Jet go for a very similar strategy, and he does happen to make it through. So for him, it definitely really paid off there. He's still staying at full health too, so that is really beneficial going into these further rooms. So Runner Watcher entering the Aghanim fight here. It is effectively a glorified cutscene, but there are small speed things you can do. You want to try and hit Aghanim into the center, because it'll reduce the amount of travel time Aga will have. The first hit will always be a reflectable yellow orb, but then after that is a 50-50, and until multiple of 5 cycle, in which it'll always be lightning. So first hit, always yellow orb, 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, lightning. And it'll repeat like that. Every 5th attack will be a lightning cycle. And I think Runner Watcher has 2 blue balls. I didn't catch it entirely. But yeah, if you want to have fun guessing in chat the amount of blue balls, you can go for it. And yeah, that was really good Aga for Runner Watcher. Yeah, just an Aga fight away, so hopefully we'll see Jet have a very similar blue ball count. In terms of the tournament, it's not so bad that their blue ball count might be high, but you want it even between the 2 players, because you want a good skill race. In this case, Runner Watcher had a low count, so here's hoping that Jet2 will always have, well, will certainly have a low count. I do believe that is the first one. So, prologue over, it turns out that we want some friends to join us for a barbecue. So we're going to go to 7 different dungeons in order to find all those friends. First friend happens to be over here, so runnerwatcher is making his way, and he has enough money to bribe the friend. He wants, again, 110 rupees, has 118, more than fine. The only thing that could happen is if he gets hit and then loses Kiki. But I don't think I've seen that myself, so I'd be really surprised if it did happen. Yeah, so see runnerwatcher did a small little shuffle there. Kiki moves pretty slow, so if you do that little shimmy, you'll get the monkey closer to the door, and then he won't have to travel as long. Just a little speed tech. But yeah, Jet made it through the fight. Again, just a little bit behind, but there's still so much to the run. In terms of time, still having a really good time. Not having a good time with the spin speed, but that's bound to happen eventually. Yeah, so Pod is the first dungeon besides Hera where the mirror plays a big role. So whereas Desert was kind of, you know, the arrow refill, and Hera was the introduction to a little bit of bombs and a little bit of mirroring, Pod, Palace of Darkness, is where we get lots of bombs and lots of mirroring. Many of these bombs will be used throughout the rest of the run. So again, it's somewhat convenient that we get the bombs here. It should also be noted that in advancing text, you can use any of the face buttons, but sometimes there may be a frame gap or something in which you would not want to hit a certain button, like the map button. Kind of like how I mentioned in the cave and hut before, where you could use the X button in those cases. The last text box you can advance with the shoulder buttons, L and R, and in the normal game they do nothing, but they will advance the last text screen. So in terms of getting items like the big key, you can advance the text with the shoulder buttons to safely get out, or even pair it with, say, the mirror after getting a big key to try and make it a little bit quicker. And of course now we have runnerwatcher trying to do the infamous hammer jump. And he does do it successfully. You have to be on a very specific Y coordinate pixel to place the bomb, and then Link needs to be on a very specific Y coordinate pixel in order to be horizontally blasted along the x-axis to get to the ledge there, clipping through. Thankfully in the speedrun you have 2 pause buffers that are completely free for it, but to give people an idea in terms of the time save for, as the new runner, you don't have to worry about going for that too much, but in terms of an experienced runner, you can actually do 37 pause buffers and get to that key, and it would still be quicker than having to go into the basement, get the key, then go through the maze, and then get the key and the hammer. So while runnerwatcher contemplates life, we see Jet now approaching the same hammer jump. Unfortunately, he misses the bomb. That's really unfortunate. So he's going to reset the room and grab the bomb on the right. Good. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Oh no! And then his bomb went the wrong direction. This is really unfortunate. He's thinking about mirror. Oh wait, no. He needs mirror anyway. Sorry, I was late. Is he going to like reset the dungeon and get more bombs? But I was getting ahead of myself. So thankfully we see him make it across, but he is really short on bombs. He's going to have to route this in later. There are some locations, thankfully, but moving on, we see runnerwatcher made it through the troll room. Not the best RNG. I think you can compensate that with some movement, but it's a little bit tricky. Either way, it's still a good pod. In order to break Humblestar's mask, you need to do 17 hammer hits. Kind of like 1 hit to initiate the fight, 6 in order to get another crack onto the mask, and then 6 to finish it, off the other portion. This is probably, in terms of dungeon and boss, probably one of the harder dungeons and harder bosses. At this point in the game, you don't have much health, and Humblestar can get some very unfavorable patterns. Not only can they be slower, but they can be, more unpredictable, and you can take a lot of damage very quickly. But runnerwatcher gets through very nicely. So you see that runnerwatcher is now discussing the party details to the barbecue, where Jet is now heading down into the basement. If you have full health, you can save a menu by sword slashing there to hit the crystal switch. For that turtle, you want to try to not hit the turtle in order to avoid the knockback, but Jet has almost a perfect turtle room. Very small time loss, but that was really good. So you see Jet here going into the fight. The runners will hold out their sword as a bit of a safety. Not only can you use sword in tandem with the hammer in order to increase the hitbox of the hammer, but it provides that little bit of a barrier, that little bit of a safety, so that you don't get hit into the mask unnecessarily. And yeah, runnerwatcher is currently in the lead by just a little bit. He's on his way to his second crystal. Still a lot before he gets there, but that is currently where he is heading. So Jet makes it through. Will be shortly to follow. So again, there's a mirror location here, so potential for a quick warp. And he got it, which is very nice. So that kid on the stunt there giving a preview of the stunt for people. But very shortly, we will play Hyrule's national anthem. And by very shortly, I mean right now. Yeah, so that soldier, for whatever reason, is exceptionally fast and has been endearingly nicknamed Usain Bolt. But using his spin speed, we were able to circumvent him. Ah, sublime. So now that we have the bird, it will play more of a role later in the speedrun, but as part of the routing, it is very convenient to get it now. So our next dungeon is Thieves' Town, and thankfully, no matter what level sword or weapon you have, it will always take 3 hits, and then another 3 hits in order to defeat the boss. It operates in 3 cycles, and each cycle is 3 hits. We will be picking up the Tempered Sword very shortly, but for the time being, since the sword, holds no difference over the dungeon boss itself, there's no better time to, complete this dungeon. I see Jet successfully gain spin speed and making it through the Red Soldier. It should be noted that they activate the flute to the west of the bird, so that the bird has less travel time. After it does its animation, it'll fly off the screen sooner. So again, just tiny low frame saves all around. So your runner watcher coming to the infamous hallway. Gets damaged, which actually goes in the center pixel, but then the RNG does not allow for further dashing. But still, for competent runners like these, taking low hits like those really don't matter much. The big thing is that you probably want to go into the blind fight with at least 3 hearts. The fire orb will do 1 heart of damage, and the head will do 2. So 3 is probably the minimum that you'd ideally want, but if you follow the script, you should, in theory, never get hit by blind. You'll see that on Jet's screen. He opened the door to the Youth Town a little bit offset. That is because Link will tumble when he pulls the door, but if you have the wall there as a buffer, it'll reduce the distance in which Link goes back, and again, will allow for a quicker entry into the dungeon. So we see Runner Watcher canceling stair leg by holding to the left. Opens up his menu because he needs the hammer in the future, and then uses it to hit the Zazog. So, you know, even things like item menuing, you know, that's part of the route too. Sometimes runners may want to opt to open their menu and switch to an item in a different part. You know, for the by and large, it's really runner preference. If there's a trick that you are less comfortable with, you can compensate by, you know, putting in the menu in a different spot. Yeah, Runner Watcher went to the prison and found our other party guest, and so now we're just making our way through. So this pot that Runner Watcher is grabbing the heart from, he wants a little bit of an extra buffer. I don't blame him. You know, 4 hearts is better than 3, and I believe it takes 10 frames in order to fill up a heart at the end screen. So the time loss isn't as big as it looks in terms of just raw time, but there's, you know, something to be said for the, you know, extra safety. In this case, it was really good. This is very scary. And there's not much to say. That's incredibly unfortunate. He was cognizant to grab the heart, which is really smart, but unfortunately, just got a spin on the boss and went off script, and now re-entering the fight, he's gonna be off script. This is really unfortunate. You never want to see this happen to a runner. The blind fight is inherently more difficult now, and this gives Jet a lot of time to catch up. It's good for Jet in terms of a tournament race, but you don't want to see this as a runner. You want runners to be performing their best. Mistakes like these do happen, and they're incredibly stressful. But it looks like Runner Watcher is doing okay. He only needs 3 more hits on blind. Has 4 to spare. A big thing is patience. You can do something quick, but it's quicker to defeat the fight than to die to it. So here, he very intelligently plays it patiently and is rewarded with a non-death. Jet had already grabbed the heart, so he will not be able to get the heart in that container, but he is going in with a couple of extra hearts right here. But yeah, it's very easy to get into a death loop or a death cycle on a boss. So the death, while unfortunate, he does still have a lead, and he did not repeat and get another death. That is a very hard fight to redo, to come back from. You see that Jet managed to get through the fight on the first attempt. So the gap is definitely closed between the two. Again, still a lot of race left. Thankfully for both runners, we now have our second party guest. In terms of dungeons, that was actually dungeon 4, so it does hit a little bit harder than, you know, a player might otherwise be used to. So see Runner Watcher here grabbing some money. We want 500 rupees in order to get the flippers from Catfish. So while earning our tempered sword here, we get those rupees along the way. It's very convenient that both that shed and the sea house will have 300 rupees. Should be noted that if you did not get the boomerang in Hyrule Castle, I think the red boomerang will be in that bombable hut. So we tried to get another party guest, but it turns out that they don't want any barbecue, they just want some fast food. So as an apology, they give us a better sword, and we go on our way. Yeah, you'll see, obviously there's a lot of little techniques, a lot of little subtleties to the run. But you probably noticed how Runner Watcher quickly jumped off that ledge to the south of him. When you're dashing normally, you go immediately off the ledge. So if you go up to a ledge like that and tap the A button, you'll immediately jump. It's like a quick hop. So, you know, it's a little thing that can be easy to miss, but if you are, you know, again, a rando or a new runner, all you do is you go up to the edge where Jet is, tap the A button, and you'll hop off very quickly. You cannot do it when facing north. You will attempt to grab the ledge instead. So there are a few instances already that you might have seen the runners kind of turn to the side, like left or right, and then tap alongside the edge to jump off very quickly. It's in order to facilitate the fact that you cannot normally do that without grabbing the ledge. So here we are in Dungeon 3, I believe, of the normal game, as well as Dungeon 3 of the speedrun. It's a little bit of a chaotic dungeon. It can be very scary, and there is some, you know, again, more RNG elements to it. But Runner Watcher getting through probably the more difficult, or potentially difficult part of the dungeon. Manipulating the Goddos can be a little bit tricky, and they do 2 hearts of damage, and it can add up very quick. But we see another nice bomb jump for Runner Watcher, intentionally falling into the hole to use invulnerability to get through that ropa. Well, you don't need to get bacon to bring it to a barbecue. I was thinking of vegetables, but by then the moment was lost. Yeah, you see Runner Watcher here, using his pause menu in order to switch to the fire rod, which we do need at that moment, so that he does not hit the spike trap and can get that key safely. See a very nice bomb jump from Jet. Again, normally you need to be within 2 pixels. If you bonk, it increases it to 6. Big scary thing about Swamp, or Skull rather, is that you do use a lot of magic in order to get to this point. You can see that Runner Watcher has about 1/3 of his bar left. A death here can be very dangerous. Obviously we don't anticipate that the runners will die, but it's a very chaotic part, and if you do die here, it will be very unfortunate. And the moth being very rude to Runner Watcher. The spikes are a class 4 damage source, as is the butter sword. So if you, and the moth is programmed to not take any damage from those. So if you try to slash moth with your butter sword, or rather if you try to do the charge spin, or no, the slash of the butter sword, sorry. It will not do any damage. If you hold the tempered sword and try to do the charge spin of the temper, it will actually do the same damage as a butter slash and will not do any damage as well. So because of that, sometimes the moth can absorb the otherwise damage that you do from the spike, and the spike will override it. So the temper, it only takes 4 slashes. With the fire rod, it takes 8 shots. It's synonymous to a master sword, but you can already see Jet had a very nice fight, and Runner Watcher had a much more trolly fight. There are ways to try and mitigate it, but it's still an unfortunate fight. Moth is harder than he should be in times, but yeah. So again, Runner Watcher trying to go for another quick warp here. We have our third party guest, and we are going to go get our flippers and our Quake. Quake will be used later in order to open up Turtle Rock, but as it's on the way to the flippers, there's no better moment to go for it. Yeah, and I guess because there's a lot to go over, obviously, when the runners were in Aga Tower, they tried to not hit the soldiers in the secondary room. If you dash through an enemy, you will not get a drop from them. So part of the speedrun is also manipulating prize packs and, you know, paying attention to them. By trying to dash through those enemies rather than slash them normally, it's in order to try and hope that you do not advance the prize pack to allow for a fairy drop in Turtle Rock. So it should be noted that if you get the fairy early, it reduces the chance of getting said fairy later. Yeah, so we see Runner Watcher here, Source Domain, Jet very close to follow. Not a lot of time between these two runners. The unfortunate part in these down definitely caught up the two. Jet bonks against that wall because while it does look very swaggy, it actually sets up for a quick warp. Yeah, so with these flippers, we now head on to the next dungeon, Ice Palace. Ice Palace, I believe, is the 5th dungeon in the game normally, but in this case it is the 4th in the speedrun. At this point, the dungeon item is the blue mail, so the game ramps up a bit. But our runners are, more likely than not, never going to be touching that blue mail. So from this point on, with the exception of Swamp, the run starts to get even more dangerous. So Jet has his finger webs and Runner Watcher already in. Yeah, in this room, you always want to have the sword out in order to hit the pen gators. It reduces the lag in the room, but even if you have the fighter sword, spinning them will reduce the lag as well. Ooh, Runner Watcher going for a little bit of an interesting strategy of sorts there. It looked like he was almost trying to damage boost or get a bit of a drop. But either way, he does have a bomb or two to spare. And in fact, he does pick up an extra spare. He knows that in terms of his own PB, that he cannot PB anymore. So it looks like he is making some concessions in order to pad his game, going for some extra drops. His main opponent in this regard is Jet, so he is making decisions in order to give him what he feels the best advantage in this race. Yeah, so Jet doing the ice pulse bomb jump here and gets through very nicely. So going into Cold Stare, you have to hit all 8 shots of your fire rod. 1 health bar, to break the ice, 1 entire magic bar is 8 fire rod shots. If he misses a single shot, he will have to redo the entire dungeon, unfortunately. But he does not miss a single shot, which is very good. And thankfully, Temper helps make quick work of Cold Stare. So as runnerwatcher gives party details to our next guest, Jet enters the fight. There are a couple of different ways to do this fight. The main thing is, as long as you beat it in a somewhat timely fashion, it is good. Ooh, and Jet just barely getting sniped there, but still had a good Cold Stare. So now after all that difficulty, all those dungeons we went through, we actually get a little bit of a break. The next dungeon will be Swamp Palace. I almost said Swamp Castle. But in terms of the normal game, this is considered dungeon number 2. So the enemies aren't actually that dangerous. But the problem is that there are so many enemies and so many different little things to watch out for, you can lose a lot of time. It's the kind of dungeon where you go through and it seems very casual, you know, very straightforward. Then all of a sudden you're like, why am I losing so much time? But yeah, just entering into Swamp here. Looks like he got the quick wort. While you're pushing a block, the game does not detect that there is any block there. I think it just has something to do with the programming where they didn't want to program the block being in transit. So during that portion, it's effectively non-existent. And if you use the mirror in that instance, you can actually erase the block. You'll see a similar use of that later with the fire rod, in which you can push the block and then shoot the fire rod in order to light some torches in mire. It looks like Jet is making a early detour here. We still need the fire rod and ether, and he is choosing to get those earlier here than later. It does make sense. In mire, you want to try and go in with full health. So by getting this here, he takes a small time loss in order to have the guaranteed health for mire. Mire is a dungeon you definitely want to have a lot of health in, not only for a very quick initial strategy, but even towards the end where you do damage boosting in order to defeat the boss quicker. so Jet has his ether and is now making his way to Swamp. In Swamp, as well as the screen that Jet is now currently in, sometimes killing enemies would reduce the lag in a room. And so by killing that Octorok, not only does it get it out of the way, but actually makes loading into this next screen a little bit faster. Same thing in Swamp. The red skeleton is notable. If you kill the red skeleton, you can reduce the time it takes to fill the water in Swamp. There are a couple little other locations where things like that are applicable. One example, in kind of a different fashion, is the room with the Godot's in Skull. If there's an extra sprite on the screen, the Wallmaster actually will not spawn until it's gone. Yeah, so Runner Watcher about to get a big key. The big thing is that little red fireball. It can snipe the runner, and so you try to move in a way that avoids it, but that is the main danger within that room right there. Another very nice chest turn by Runner Watcher. Jet got an extra bomb, so both runners are the same in terms of their bomb count. You want one bomb going into Mire in order to get through to the back where Vitress is. In Runner Watcher's case, he wants at least one bomb as well to get into the Ice Rod Cave. So 2 is the absolute minimum we want here. And here you'll see the runners kind of using the grid to their advantage. Runner Watcher kind of nuzzled up against that statue and then got the chest and walked diagonal, and that's in order to get that one chest on the right with the key to line up perfectly with it. Oh, and Jet having a very nice extra bomb drop there, so he is well primed in terms of bomb count. And Runner Watcher also has a good arrow count, so he forgoes the restock room. He does not get anything there. And so now he'll be going into the Argus fight. Argus, in terms of time save, is probably one of the hardest bosses of the game. Just having to do with trying to get a 0 cycle. And if you mess up the 0 cycle, it's not much quicker, or rather, it's not much slower than doing this strategy that he is doing. Very nice dodging of the pus right there. Yeah, and Jet pausing for an extra second in order to avoid that fireball. Yeah, so bear in mind that Runner Watcher looks a little bit more ahead than he really is. Jet did get the Ice Rod and Ether before coming to Swamp, so now that Mire is next for Runner Watcher, he will have to make those trips. Yeah, and you see Jet line up, walk diagonally, or oh, just freestyling out here. So yeah, the benefit to Jet's route is that he will have the full health refill from the cutscene, but Runner Watcher really wants to avoid a hit here. And he does. This is the hardest screen in terms of trying to avoid a hit. So that was really good. His Mar 2 screen will be much quicker, barring any other disaster, of course. So now Jet heading into the Arius fight. It almost looked like he was going to try for the zero cycle, but he's just doing a very similar strategy to what runnerwatcher did. Yeah, basically almost a comparable fight. Should be noted on runnerwatcher's screen, that rock over there, should you want an extra bomb, you can lift it up and hope for a 50-50 spawn chance. runnerwatcher has his one bomb for Meyer, so he is not concerned with it currently. So yeah, you can see between these two runners, they're actually much closer than they appeared before. Jet has a little bit of a cutscene to go through, but... yeah, runnerwatcher getting the quick warp, having a little fun with the charge spin. It's now onto the 6th dungeon. Aw, and he froze that poor bird. But knowing that it's very cold outside, I decided to bring him in too, where it's nice and warm in here. Yeah, we'll disregard the fact that the bird disappeared into the nether. But... yeah, and a good Mar 2 room from runnerwatcher there. Jet, very short to follow. Yeah, so going through that room, the big danger is that fireball that will shoot. Depending on your movement and the time, you can try and beat it. But runnerwatcher, you know, correctly realizing and reacting and canceling his dash, does not get hit by the fireball. A big thing again is health in this dungeon. And we see a nice Mar 2 from Jet as well. There are a few different ways to do it again, and both of them seem to go for a similar strategy. And for both, it worked out really well. And here we see the aforementioned fire rod through the block technique from runnerwatcher. Yeah, so Jet did not have to worry about the fireball. Ooh, unfortunately that's sort of being hitting the switch an extra time. Yeah, and Jet taking some hits here. They will be going through a spike room where they have to tank a little bit more, but he's going to have to change his strategy up a little bit going through the rest of this dungeon. Nice turn from Jet there, or Jet, runnerwatcher. Jet does nice turns too. Yeah, and here's where there is some damage boosting through the spikes. So see that runnerwatcher's down to 8 hearts, and Jet is already down to 7, and he's not going through that room yet. The dungeon can be scary, and there are a couple of extra hearts there that runnerwatcher got. But the main thing is that time. Time will get eaten up in this dungeon if you're missing hearts. There is a little bit of fear within the fight itself, but time is really a big factor. Ideally, going into the Vitreous fight, you want 7 hearts total. It typically takes about 6 in order to defeat the fight. You can do it with less and still go very quickly, but that's kind of the more recognized number of hearts that you'd have. So at 10 hearts here, Runner Watcher is very healthy for the fight. Yeah, so here is where Jet will take a little... Oh! Pardon me, did he grab an extra key? I must have missed that. My apologies. So yeah, he opted for a different strategy and won't have the same worry. Solo commentary, a little bit difficult. Throat's dry, missing a few things. Trying to cover as much as I can. Yeah, and Runner Watcher, being conscientious of his arrow count, gets through the fight and tries to save an arrow or 2. Yeah, so Runner Watcher gets the 6th gust and will now be going up to Turtle Rock. Turtle Rock, another dungeon with some damage tanking. Again, not only you know, do you have to take damage, but the game expects you to be beefier than you currently are. So you see Jet here. Going into the slime, taking 1 heart of damage in order to defeat, in order to not take the damage from the eyeballs. He does a good job here, just avoids the lightning. And he takes down Vitreous. Sitting at 11 arrows, but there are some arrow refills within Turtle Rock, and there are some options in the tower too. Yeah, I mean, see the scrolls actually playing pretty nice for him today. Hopefully Jet will have a similar good Deadrock RNG. But sometimes they can get in your way. You can manipulate how you hit them, but regardless, they can still be a big pain. Looks like Runner Watcher is doing an item dash with the Quake and opening Turok here. But then does not have the quick speed. Can be a little bit risky to go for that strategy, and the time save is incredibly minor. So for the most part, main damage, main health concern is actually in the beginning of this dungeon. The laser bridge can be scary, but for experienced runners, it's not actually the biggest threat. Going into this roller room, you're expected to kind of take 3 hearts of damage in terms of a quick speedrun. But then the chain chomps later can also do substantial damage to you, and their RNG is much more unpredictable. Yeah, unfortunately, Runner Watcher, 6 hearts, which again is more than enough, but he does get that fairy. That fairy is what we tried to manipulate the prize pack for earlier. So, despite all the damage taken, Runner Watcher is in a very, very good spot right now. Jet enters the dungeon a little bit healthier, but because he got the fairy earlier, is unlikely that he will get one from the Hokuboku. That is to say, the pokey enemy. Oh, unfortunately, I think Jet's rando instinct's kicking in there. He wants to make sure he doesn't get lost, and so too finds the map to the dungeon. It's a minor time loss, but it's very easy to do. A lot of times when you go through this game, you can be on autopilot just because you come through the motions so much. Runner Watcher entering into the double pokey room. There are 16 different RNG patterns here. Blunt Bunny has a wonderful video on YouTube that goes through very good strategies and how to deal with that room. Yeah, so because Runner Watcher has full health here, he's able to get through this very quickly using Sword Beam. The room that Jet is entering has 4 different RNG patterns in terms of the Hokuboku, and he actually got the exact same pattern as Runner Watcher, but unfortunately hit it, and so got a little bit of the Crystal Switch in tandem with the strike he went for. But it is nice to see that both runners are getting some very comparable situations to work with. So probably the last more dangerous part of Turtle Rock, the Laser Bridge. The Hard Hat Beetle has some different times in which his movement activates, but Runner Watcher able to knock him into the pit, say goodbye, and has his key, and we'll move on. See Jet here, having a, well, yeah, I guess not necessarily a nicer pattern, but he definitely has a pattern for his double pokey. And of course, the last threatening part of Turtle Rock. Runner Watcher does not opt for the backdoor strat, instead will go to the front. In terms of time, not too much different. And especially in terms where nerves will play a factor. You want to do what is safer and what it will make you more sore. But a good fight from Runner Watcher. Charnex down. And we will now shortly get our last barbecue member. You see Jet entering the Liz Bridge here. He too knocks the Hard Hat Beetle into the Shadow Realm. His health is a little bit low. He does have many bombs, but is not going for the safety door. So it seems that, again, like foregoing the mushroom from earlier, he seems quite confident. He does play very much, he is a good player of the game. So it's not a surprise to see him forgo that. Yeah, so Runner Watcher making use of a Japanese 1.0 exclusive glitch with the item dashing, hitting the hookshot and the boots at the same time to get that super speed coming off the stairs, and he will need the hookshot later in the dungeon anyway. Meanwhile, Jet, not opting for backdoor strats either, has a very nice Trinex too. Again, not much separating these runners, still very close together. Unfortunately, runnerwatcher having a little bit of an issue there. If you hold out your sword and try to do the aforementioned item dash at the same time, you'll go up the stairs much quicker, but he had a little bit of difficulty with it. This is a tiny little time save, and of course, it's a tiny little time loss. But sometimes we take those. I see Jag go for a very nice spin speed there. Dashing past the Grandma Centaurs, and he will be entering Ganon Tower very shortly. Coming into this cutscene, you can actually cancel your dash at the very end, and it will reduce some of the lag frames entering the tower. It can be a little bit tricky to time though. Of course, runnerwatcher bringing the bonk feature to very good use. Not only was he able to bonk over that warp, but he could do it to get over the invisible gap on the bridge there. So arrows are very vital here. You still want to have arrows for this refight of Armos, and then upstairs you want to have arrows for the Mimic room. After that, arrows will no longer matter, but barring the exception of using them for some strategies a little bit later that are a little bit more minor. But his arrow count is good at 10 arrows. So with the big key in tow, he's now heading up the tower. Oh, and he gets a fortunate arrow drop. So, runnerwatcher making it through that spike room. There are a couple of different strategies you can do, but he just goes for, you know, a very safe, consistent strategy, which is very smart. He goes through the Ganon Ball Z room, and putting those extra arrows to good use, taking out the first room of the gauntlet. These 5 rooms are colloquially referred to as the gauntlet in Ganon Tower. It's just 5 different rooms where the developers threw a lot of little different scenarios at you. So in the first one you saw some conveyors and enemies, you know, the second one you saw conveyors and different enemies, now you see conveyors and spikes, now you see enemies, conveyors, spikes, lasers, and ice. To top it all off, they strip all those other things and just fill it with ice. Or I said, oh shoot, I meant cannonball, my bad. I was literally playing Dragon Ball FighterZ yesterday, so it's a little bit more on my mind, but Jet here, going through mimics too. I think there is something about how the player guide for this game actually mentions that Samaria strat in that room. So kind of funny, you know, the room that the Samaria Cane was made for. Ganon Ball, well, you know what? At least we covered all the options. Yeah, Jet now entering the gauntlet. And this is probably, you know, there's definitely a lot of scares in the tower, but this kind of area is one of the last few big scares of the run. Magic management. The health refill, or the magic refill there is very nice to get. but running out of magic here would be disastrous to a run. You see a very nice dash with Jet right there. And he's now done the gauntlet. We'll be going to Lamola 2. So for Runnerwatcher, his magic count is very good. Unfortunately, takes a fall on Moldorm. His health is a little bit low, but his magic count is really good. Yeah, possibly frustration slashes from Runnerwatcher. Status inconclusive, but he makes it past Moldorm. He is now shortly before the Agatu fight. And you see that Jet move to the side a little bit there. That's to mitigate the chance of one of those guards knocking you, possibly into the pit. I don't think it's 100%, but it largely mitigates the risk. So Agatu, revisit of Aga 1 obviously. The first cycle will always be yellow orb. The clones always shoot yellow orbs, but for phase 2 and 3, there is, 2 and 3, there is a 50-50 chance that the real Aga will do a blue ball. So ideally, you're looking for about 3 cycles in total, preferably 2, but the game doesn't always facilitate for that, seeing as Agatu requires 6 hits in order to defeat. So about 3 is what you're looking for, and I believe that is what Runnerwatcher got, but I'm sure chat would be able to correct me on that, should that not be the case. So here at last we come in order to get our pig for the barbecue. This first cycle requires 12 strikes from the Tempered Sword, and the second cycle with the Fire Bats requires 12 hits. When Ganon is raising and twirling his trident like that, with the Fire Bats going around, this is denoting phase 2. So he needs 12 strikes in order to 1 cycle and defeat this cycle. This teleport phase is phase 3, and it is 50-50 chance in order for Ganon to teleport. So, as you can see here, Runnerwatcher having some bad RNG in terms of the teleport. And we see the blue ball on Jet's screen, unfortunately. You can see here, now that all 4 has fallen, we are currently on phase 4 of the fight. Now normally within the game you would have the silver arrows, so it takes 4 silver arrow shots in order to defeat Ganon. In this case, it is 12 spins with the Tempered Sword. It's also the same to do 12 spins with the Butter Sword. With the Master Sword it'd actually be 24, so in terms of the low percent category, it's a much more difficult fight. The important thing here is that you get that torch glitch that Runnerwatcher got. If you light left torch before the right torch goes out, the right torch will never go out. It's important not only for trying to get onto a good pattern, rhythm, and cycle for taking out Ganon, but it has to do with magic management as well. So Runnerwatcher making very good use of all the tools at his disposal. So GG's to him. He will finish in first place with an SRTV time of 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 57 seconds. So a sub of 129. That is a very, very respectable time. And going along with that, Jet in phase 3, not far behind at all. We'll see if we can get both racers in here for an interview. And I do see Runnerwatcher in the waiting room, so we'll pull him in. Hello, Mr. Runnerwatcher. GG's.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Obviously, it could have been a much better run. Some mishaps around the middle of Dark World, but it's okay. A 128 is still good.
You definitely did avoid the vortex, though, getting the one death and not having a repeat. And wow, I'm sorry, Jet's almost getting taken out by the fire bat there. It looked like he was very cognizant and let go of the direction of his input, so that he did not actually get propelled into the pit. But yeah, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you happen to know? Do you happen to know if Jet is on PB pace?
I believe he's on PB pace at least.
Okay, that's really good. I'm very happy that he at least. I know that we were both on very good runs for who we are, for how we play. There was so much. I did so much stupid stuff in this run, like ice and then being locked out of the blocks and getting the heart piece on the way to Meyer. Like, I don't know. Why would I get that heart? Like, my brain was just not working. And yet there were also points at which I was playing like the best I've ever played in like my life. So I don't know. It was a very confusing run.
It's fair enough. I'll just quickly say that Jet finishes in second place with a time of 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 43 seconds, which according to SR.com should be a PB. So big congrats to him, of course. And it was still a wonderful race from you. As you're saying, some stuff that was kind of a little bit back and forth. But considering the time itself, it's a very respectable time. And then, a death in Easttown, that's an exceptional run.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. This is my best Light World since 2015 or 2016 or something. So it just kind of came out of nowhere. And there were a lot of mistakes in Light World too. And I just kind of played very solidly the rest of it. One thing I've been thinking about, I've just been playing a little bit less lazy the past few days. And what I mean by lazy, there's something very specific that I mean by that, which is that I have stopped watching for Link's movement before starting a dash, and I just try to time the dash with the screen transition. And I think that alone saves me like a second or two every split.
Yeah, fair enough. Can talk about that more in a second here, but I want to say GG Jet, that was a very good race. Obviously you two had your ups and downs, but I do believe that is a PB for you.
Yeah, that's a new PB.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I'm really happy that you PB'd in a race with me. That I feel like it's partly because of me. I'm going to take credit for it.
Oh man, and there's some sloppy parts. The bomb situation, both of my bomb jumps, I don't know what happened. Like, my thumbs just decided to stop working, I guess. But that's okay, because there was plenty of places to farm bombs. And, of course, I opened the map chest in Turtle Rock. My instincts of a rando runner, it's just really hard to get rid of that muscle memory.
Yeah, it was definitely cute to watch that, because I know I've made the same. I think I've kicked that habit at this point, but I think anyone coming from rando to speedrun has definitely done that before. It's always a map.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I have to tell myself every time I go into a dungeon, don't open chests. Like, I have to tell myself, and it gets better as you go along, and then by Turtle Rock, I sort of forget to remind myself to do that. Muscle memory takes over then. It's that Turtle Rock chest and the thieves upstairs, that one usually gets me too for some reason. Yeah,
definitely. And I guess dialing back a little bit to your bomb jump. Yeah, it looked like you got the hammer jump, I think the first try, but then I think the bomb just kind of went over the edge, and then you shift your position, which kind of threw it off. And so you opted to just fall off, but we're cognizant to grab the other bomb on the right, which I thought was very smart. But then, of course, your bomb count is a little bit dicey, and then you farm bombs, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, he's got like 10 bombs. Like, do you just go to his store? Do you just go on a shopping trip? Like, he is loaded with bombs.
Poke's like, here, have an 8-pack. I'm like, gee, thanks. I don't need any more bombs, but I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was so excited. Like, I'm like, oh, I got the hammer jump set up on the first try, and I don't know, I hit right a little too much. Like I said, my thumbs just stopped working at that point. I'm like, crap.
Yeah, that exact same thing actually happened to me. It happened twice in a row. The second time I caught myself, but yeah, I don't know if it's a tournament setting or what, but nerves and everything kind of going into it. But you're definitely not alone in that regard. It was still really good. It just sucks to like nailed it. Crap. You jump off, you have to go up the ledge and redo it.
I mean, I feel like I'm really close to the sub 130, so I'm actually pretty excited about this run. Like new PB by over a minute, so definitely not going to complain about that. I had a bad Lambo too, so lost some time there. My bomb jumps in the farming, like that, lost some time there. I feel like sub 130 is going to come soon.
Oh no,
I think so. I definitely think so, and hopefully you will stick with NMG, the superior way to play the game.
Yeah, the superior. I might argue against that, but I do want to hit my sub 130 before I go back to. Well, before. No, I still focus on rando. Sorry.
Well, better be careful. It might be them's fighting words depending on how you phrase yourself. But no, all jokes aside, watching our gameplay, I think it's more than clear that no, certainly that 130 is not a what if. It's just a when, and like I'm sure you could do another run like right now, and you very well could get that sub 130 just based on your gameplay.
Well, I think my thumbs are gonna fall off right now, so I don't know.
That's very fair. Maybe take 5.
Yeah. So GG Runner Watcher on your 120.
GG, thank you. I mean, I'm really, really happy with how I played, except like a few things that just happened to be. Sometimes you make these small mistakes and they don't matter that much, and sometimes you make big mistakes. And in this run, my mistakes were all big mistakes. So. It could have easily been a 127 if just like a few things have gone differently.
Oh man.
If like 5 things have gone differently, it could have been a PB, and I haven't PB'd in this game since 2015. The last time I PB'd in this category was in the NMG tournament in like the spring of 2015. So it's been over 3 years for me. So a PB would have felt really good.
You have some races coming up, so maybe you'll PB in this tournament too.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I do play well in races. I play well in tournaments. I feel that I kind of rise to the occasion, and my style is very like, I think you probably saw a little bit that I very much like adjust to the situation, adjust to the health situation and the rupee situation and the arrow situation. So I think that gives me an advantage in the tournament setting, just because other runners sometimes aren't keeping an eye on things like that.
I definitely learned that one the hard way. Just not farming enough, well, not watching my bomb and arrow count, and all of a sudden I get to a point where, oh crap, I need a bomb and I don't know what to do. So I've gotten better about farming it, and yeah, that's definitely a good skill to have.
Yeah, I think of course, a nice thing about the speedrun is that much of it is more static. It's very much, skill and execution based, with little bits of RNG that change your routing. There is a subtle routing to it, and so you can think, well, maybe I'll get that bomb drop in Swamp, which you actually did happen to get. Or, farm the bomb early or farm it later, or go for the 50-50 rock. There's a lot of little, different little bits of ebb and flow to how a person can approach. And, I think that's kind of what Runner Watcher is touching on, is that the malleability of the runner definitely plays a big role, where you can get into a very rigid set of motions, but then being able to change your strategy or to make, concessions to what your plan might have been. It's very important for having a healthy, speed run.
And it's what gives the run a little, like, every run a little bit is its own story in No Major Glitches, because there are so many, in Link to the Past, kind of any category, because there's so many, there's enemy RNGs in every room, and there's drop RNG, and there's all these little things that you need to think about, and you get to make different decisions every time, and that to me is sort of what's fun about it. So I'm very happy that it has that element to it.
Yeah, definitely. And the story of this race was went and had a nice little barbecue, and one runner had a PB, and one runner was watching the runners, and yeah, it was a real good time. I guess last question I have for you, Jet, before I think we're probably ready to wrap it up, is did you happen to see Runner Watcher in Thieves Town?
No, I wasn't watching Runner Watcher's stream.
Okay, so a large part of I guess, maybe his, frustrations or kind of his sentiments is he actually happened to die on the blind fight.
Oh, wow.
And had to redo the fight. He did it successfully the second time, but he just had an unfortunate first go at it.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what happened. I feel like blind was somehow still. I was doing the pattern, but somehow maybe I went to the right. And so blind was still in invulnerability frames when I was trying to poke him.
Do you normally do that charge spin on the fight?
No, that was when I realized I was off pattern, and I just spun because I knew that would hit him right away. But I hadn't gotten. I mean, it was supposed to be a poke that hit him, but I think because I walked to the right, he got past me while he was still in invulnerability from the first hit.
Do you mean from the first cycle? Like within the first 3?
No. From the first. So the hit, the spin was the second hit of the second cycle.
Okay.
And the first hit of the second cycle was right. And then I think maybe I was supposed to just stand there and wait for him to walk into my sword. And I walked to the right. And I do what I normally did, but maybe I walked to the right early or something. And so he got past me with invulnerability. And so I spun to just hit him as he was on the other side, but then it was completely off pattern.
Okay, fair enough. Might have to, I don't know if you two are big fans of rewatching, your own commentaries or your own races, but
yeah,
that'll be a fun thing to go back and check out, most certainly.
Well, good job on the recovery, though. Even with the blind death, that's a bit of a time loss there.
Yeah, I mean, it was about a minute, and then I think I lost 15 more seconds. The refight I just played incredibly. If you rewatch, you'll see it. I just waited at the bottom and didn't even try on the third phase to go hit blind. I just waited for him to come to me.
He starts in the middle already, so you can't really get that setup you have when you first drop them all. So
yeah, it's the refight is very hard.
Yeah.
And that was actually when I hadn't been watching either, especially because, I had one of my best Light Worlds ever, and then I had one blue ball. I had a bad pod, but I was still on PB pace coming out of pod. So it was the best run I've had in years.
Okay.
So I wasn't even watching. I figured that I was probably ahead of you because I was getting great luck and playing really well. But I hadn't even thought of opening. I was just focusing on my own run until I died, and then after I won the refight, I figured now's when I need to start watching to just make sure I'm ahead and so that I can react to the situation. And I think after that, I had a few more mishaps, and I actually think that up until maybe T-Rock, we basically kept pace with each other. I think we were basically
oh man,
I was ending crystal cutscenes when you were starting them pretty much every time. It was 45.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. I guess real quick, you were in the Swamp Crystal cutscene when Runner Watcher was entering Mire. Or he was getting ready to go to Mire. For the whole run, you two were pretty comparable. I would say about a minute apart. And then Runner Watcher pulled ahead a little bit more. And then the Thieves Town death kind of it didn't sink you two. There was still I want to say about maybe 40 seconds or so difference, but it kind of tightened it back up to how it was for a lot of the initial run, and then that basically maintained until the end.
Oh man, sounds like an exciting. I'll have to watch it.
I'm definitely gonna rewatch it.
My bomb jumps were off. My Skull Woods was not very good. My Turtle Rock, I was like, this was horrible. So those I could see definitely where Runner Watcher was pulling ahead. Yeah, cool.
Well, good race. I think we should let Gesellschaft get to whatever she's doing. But thank you for the commentary. I appreciate it, and congrats on your win today as well, Gesellschaft.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for letting me commentate your guys' race. It was a lot of fun, and definitely a good personal training exercise in terms of solo commentary. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to a short little break here, but it was a ton of fun. I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched the run. For supporting Speed Gaming. A lot of different collaborative efforts come into making this possible. Obviously, we're here to honor the runners. We run the game because we love the game, but also I just want to give a huge shout out to the restreamer and again the viewers, because if no one was watching, there'd be no point to really stream it. And if there was no love or passion to run the game, there just wouldn't be this whatsoever at all. So you know, for my own part, thank you to everyone who put so much, you know, love and effort forward. And I'm not entirely sure what else is happening in terms of speed gaming. They have an entire schedule with you know, a robust list of different projects. But for my part, thank you so much. My name is Giselle, and I'll see you all later. Bye.